My name is Norman Withers, and I've waited most of my life to say this out loud. Not because I wanted to protect anyone, not because I believed the silence was noble. I stayed quiet because the land itself seemed to prefer it that way. I served as a federal ranger for just over 32 years, most of them spent in a stretch of protected land that never made it onto tourist brochures. The public maps showed forest, meadow, and an unremarkable flat basin near the northern boundary. But the map I carried, the folded paper one that creased deeper every season, never quite agreed with what my boots felt. There was a field out there, no name on any sign, no marker post, just grass that grew waist-high in the summer and laid itself flat under snow like it was being pressed down by a hand you couldn't see. The strange thing was this: no matter where you stood, the field felt like it was leaning. Not sloped, not sunken, perfectly level by every survey standard we had in the 1970s, and yet when you stood still long enough, your body began to compensate for a tilt that didn't exist. Knees locked, ankles tightened, your inner ear whispered that you were about to slide. The first time I noticed it, I was a junior ranger running fence checks with a clipboard and a borrowed flashlight that still smelled faintly of kerosene. I remember stopping, looking back at my boot prints and feeling embarrassed, like I was getting dizzy over nothing. I wrote it off as fatigue. Long weeks will do that to a man. But the field kept doing it, year after year. By the time I was issued my own truck and radio, I'd learned something unspoken: you don't linger there. Not because of policy, because everyone who did came back quieter, less certain of their sentences, like they were choosing words carefully even when talking about the weather. We logged everything back then: weather shifts, animal behavior, soil erosion, even feelings sometimes if they seemed relevant, but entries about that field always went missing. Pages torn clean from logbooks, coordinates smudged like someone had brushed a thumb across them while the ink was still wet. I once asked my supervisor about it, an old man who'd been wearing the same hat since before I enlisted. He didn't look up when he answered, just said, "If the land doesn't want a name, don't give it one." That should have been enough to scare me off. It was. What finally set the hook was a box I wasn't supposed to open. It sat in the records room, tucked behind fire reports and flood damage photos, labeled only with a year, 1885. No park name, no author, just brittle paper tied with twine. Inside were handwritten ranger notes from before our agency even had its current name. Different handwriting, different tools, same problem. They described a clearing that appeared flat by chain measure and compass, yet caused men to lean uphill without realizing it. Horses refused to cross it. Compass needles wavered but never fully spun. One entry mentioned nausea, another mentioned dreams of standing upright while the world tipped away. The final page was a report of a man who walked into the field at dawn to prove it false. He was found hours later at the exact same spot, boots worn through at the toes, like he'd been bracing himself against a force no one else could see. Cause of death was listed as exposure, time of death left blank. When I brought that box to my supervisor, he closed it without reading a word, told me some things were inherited problems. Then he took the key from the records room off his ring and dropped it into his desk drawer. I didn't stop going out there after that. If anything, I went more often. I told myself I was gathering data. Truth is, I think the field had already started gathering me. Because once you notice the tilt, you can never quite stand straight again. And that's when the radios started acting up. The radios didn't fail all at once. That would have been too obvious, too easy to report. Instead, they hesitated. You'd key the mic and hear your own breath come back a half-second late, or a reply would arrive stretched thin, words pulled like taffy as if the air between us had thickened. Dispatch blamed the terrain, solar interference, old equipment, all reasonable explanations in the late 70s when analog gear had a personality of its own. But the strange thing was this: the interference only happened near the field. Step 50 yards back into the trees and the signal cleared like nothing had ever been wrong. I tested it, walked slow, counting steps, radio pressed to my chest. At 30 paces in, the static returned. At 40, my call sign echoed back to me softer, like someone else was trying it on. I stopped logging those tests after I realized the logbook didn't remember them. I'd write a clean paragraph, time, weather, coordinates, and the next day it would be gone, not erased, not crossed out, just absent, like I'd never put pen to paper. That's when the first man went missing. His name was Elliot Grange, seasonal ranger, fresh out of training, still believed the manuals covered everything that mattered. He volunteered to run a boundary check that cut straight across the field, said it would save him time before dark. He never made it back to the truck. We found his hat near the center of the clearing, brim bent inward like it had been folded against resistance. No footprints leading away, no sign of a struggle. The grass lay flat in a perfect oval around it, pressed down evenly, as if something heavy had rested there without moving. The search went on for 3 days. Dogs refused to cross the tree line. One of them whimpered like it had hurt its paw, even though there was no injury. Helicopters couldn't get clearance because of airspace issues that didn't exist on any chart I'd ever seen. On the 4th day, we were told to stop. Not by radio, by a man in a government sedan with no agency markings and a voice that never quite rose or fell. He didn't ask for reports, didn't take notes, just told us Elliot had transferred jurisdictions. I remember arguing, my voice shaking, my boots sliding slightly in the grass even though I was well outside the field. The man looked at me then, really looked, and said something I still hear in my sleep. Ranger Withers, the land has a long memory, but it doesn't like witnesses. After that, the field was quietly reclassified. No fences, no signs, just a blank space on updated maps like a printer error no one bothered to fix. New rangers weren't told about it. Old ones avoided it. Except me. I started having dreams where I was standing in the clearing, perfectly upright, while the horizon slowly tipped, trees leaning away, sky pouring off to one side. In the dreams, I wasn't afraid. I was relieved, like I'd finally found the right angle to exist. I woke up sore, calves burning, toes numb, as if I'd spent the night bracing myself. The second disappearance was worse because it was slower. Martha Klein, search and rescue. She went in with a rope tied to her waist and me holding the other end. We took 10 steps into the field before she stopped, said she felt like she was walking uphill through level ground. At 15 steps, the rope went slack. I pulled hard, the rope slid back toward me, frayed and warm like it had been rubbed raw against stone. There was no sound, no snap, just absence where tension should have been. We never found Martha, not a scrap of fabric, not a bone. Officially, she resigned. Unofficially, her name was never spoken again. That was the year I received my first verbal order. No paperwork, no memo, just a quiet meeting and a reminder that my pension depended on my adaptability. I was told to treat the field as a natural anomaly, to discourage access, to forget the records from 1885. I nodded, I agreed. But every time I stood near that place, I felt it pulling, not on my body, but on my sense of what level meant, as if it was trying to teach me something by unteaching everything else. And in 1983, it finally succeeded. Because that was the year I stepped into the field alone without a rope, without a radio call logged, and felt the ground push back. I didn't tell anyone I was going in. By then, secrecy had become as routine as checking tire pressure or signing out keys. I left my truck at the tree line, engine ticking as it cooled, and carried only a flashlight, a folded map I no longer trusted, and the last clean page of my logbook. The moment my boots crossed into the field, my body reacted like it had been waiting years for permission. Ankles tightened, spine adjusted, not panic recognition. The grass brushed my legs in a way that felt directional, like grain against the hand. I took one step, then another. The world didn't move, but my sense of upright did. It felt like standing on a deck as a ship slowly lists, except there was no moment of imbalance, only correction. My muscles worked to keep me vertical against a pressure that wasn't wind, wasn't gravity, wasn't anything I had words for. Halfway in, my flashlight flickered, not dead, just dimmed as if the batteries were being asked to power something else first. The beam showed no slope, no distortion, just ordinary grass, ordinary dirt, ordinary insects clinging stubbornly to normality. Then I heard breathing. Not behind me, not ahead. All around, shallow and patient, rising and falling in the same rhythm my chest had settled into. I realized with a cold clarity that it wasn't copying me. I was matching it. The thought didn't scare me until I understood why. The field wasn't tilted because something beneath it was wrong. It was tilted because it wasn't meant for us to stand in the first place. It was aligned to something else, something that intersected our world at a permanent angle. When I reached the center, the pressure stopped increasing. My body relaxed, and for the first time. In years, nothing hurt, no strain, no correction. I was standing exactly as the field wanted me to. That's when I saw them. Not figures, not ghosts, impressions, Places where the grass refused to rise, shaped like men who had stood too long and learned the wrong way to be upright. Elliot, Martha, the nameless ranger from 1885, not dead, not alive, just held. The breathing deepened. I knew then what the land wanted. Witnesses don't just observe, they align, they become reference points. And once enough of us stood the wrong way long enough, the field wouldn't feel tilted anymore. The rest of the world would. I don't remember leaving. I remember waking up at the edge of the clearing, boots worn thin at the toes, logbook blank except for a single line I don't recall writing. Corrected orientation achieved. After that, the visits from officials stopped. The verbal orders ended. The field was left alone like a sleeping animal that had been fed. I finished my career quietly, retired, moved far enough away that the ground under my feet felt honest again. But some mornings I still wake up bracing myself, muscles tight, convinced the horizon has shifted in the night. I'm telling you this now because the maps are changing again. I've seen the new prints, blank spaces where there shouldn't be any, flat land that makes surveyors lean without knowing why. If you ever find yourself in a place where your body insists the world is slanted, even though every instrument says it's level, don't adjust. Leave. Because the land doesn't kill you, it teaches you. And once you learn its angle, you never truly stand straight again.